It was supposed to be just another night in a luxury hotel. But at exactly 2:17 a.m., Mei's eyes flew open. Something was wrong. The air in the room was icy cold, the kind that seeps into your bones. The silence was so heavy she could hear her own heartbeat. And then, the bed beneath her began to move. Not a shake. Not a tremor. It rose. Slowly. She gasped as the ceiling light came closer, closer, until it was almost within reach. The mattress hovered there, suspended in the dark, as if held by invisible hands. Somewhere in the room, a low, rasping breath echoed, followed by a voice she would never forget. That night, Mei learned there are places you're never meant to stay in. Adrian and Mei were a Singaporean couple in their early 50s. For most of their lives, they had poured time and energy into the real estate business. From small apartments, they had steadily expanded, buying, selling, and reinvesting with skill, until they owned a portfolio most people could only dream of. After 20 years of hard work, they had finally reached the stage where they could reward themselves with peace and comfort. No more late-night calls from clients. No more last-minute races to close deals. They were officially retired. For Adrian, retirement meant the chance to travel. He often told his wife, "We've worked more than enough for a lifetime. Now it's time to enjoy what we've built." Mei was a little different. She loved the warmth and calm of home, but didn't mind the idea of a luxury getaway, so long as it was safe and convenient. That's why, instead of flying overseas, they decided to try a grand hotel right in the city, a place neither had stayed before. It wasn't that they'd never experienced luxury. The receptionist bowed with a flawless smile, and everything about the place radiated elegance and expense. As usual, Adrian wasted no time checking every detail, from room service and dining options to the leisure facilities. Mei, on the other hand, just wanted to put down her bags and rest after a long day of preparations. Their room was on the 15th floor, reserved for VIP guests. The suite was spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the glittering night skyline. A king-sized bed dressed in crisp white sheets stood at the center, next to a small tea table with 2 crystal glasses glowing under the warm light. It was so quiet. They could hear nothing but the hum of the air conditioner and the steady rhythm of their own breathing. That evening, they dined together in the hotel's restaurant. Golden lights, soft jazz. Have some fun. Just don't come back too late, she smiled. Adrian nodded. Mei stepped into the elevator and pressed 15. As the doors closed, the low hum of the motor carried her upward. She didn't know that in just a few minutes, the calm would vanish. The 15th floor was quiet. Warm wall sconces cast light down onto the thick carpet, swallowing the sound of her heels. Their room was at the very end of the hallway. Mei slid the keycard into the slot, but the door didn't open. Once. Twice. 3 times. Each time, there was only a short beep and the red light blinking back at her. She frowned, exhaling softly. Maybe I'm swiping it the wrong way, she thought, trying again. Her hand still gripped the door handle as her heartbeat quickened. She blinked, forcing herself to stay calm, telling herself it must be housekeeping. It couldn't be anything else. She had no idea this was only the first sign of a night she would never forget. Mei stood still at the door for a few seconds, straining to listen. She frowned and slid the keycard into the slot again. Still the same short, dry beep and the cold red light. She flipped the card over and tried again. No change. Maybe the system's down, she thought, but a prickle of unease began to creep into her mind. She was just about to turn away and call the front desk when that voice came again. Go, go. Don't come in. This time, it was clearer, like it was right on the other side of the door. The deep, raspy tone stretched each word out slowly, dragging them through the cold air. Mei's body went rigid. Her heartbeat pounded. Her ears ringing. She glanced down the hallway again. No one. The warm yellow wall lights still burned steadily, casting her shadow onto the thick carpet. Her mind scrambled for explanations. Maybe someone's inside, maybe housekeeping on the phone. But somewhere deep down, another thought whispered, something's not right. She cleared her throat and tapped gently on the door. Unnatural quiet that seemed to swallow every sound. Mei stepped back, feeling the cold from the floor seep through her thin shoes. She swiped the card once more, this time, almost desperately. And then, something strange happened. Without anyone touching it, the door slowly eased open. The hinges gave a faint groan, the sound stretching like a distant hiss. Darkness spilled out from inside, swallowing the light from the hallway. Mei stood at the threshold, heart pounding. The air inside was colder, much colder, and carried a faint, musty smell, laced with something oddly sweet. "Adrian? Are you in there?" she called. No reply. She stepped in, hand feeling along the wall until she found the light switch. The lights flickered on, but the room didn't look like it had that afternoon. The bedspread was wrinkled, pillows tossed aside, towels draped carelessly over a chair. The curtains were partly drawn, swaying gently, though the windows were shut tight. A chill ran down her spine. Everything looked recently used, yet no one was here. Mei took a half step back, thinking she should go find someone from the staff. But from deep inside, near the bathroom, came a faint sound. Drip, drip, drip. She froze. The dripping came in uneven bursts, stopping and starting again. And in that pause between drops, she felt it, eyes on her. Watching. From somewhere deep in the shadows. She forced herself to stay calm. Taking a slow breath, she stepped fully into the room. Set her handbag down on the chair, and closed the door behind her. She didn't know it yet, but the moment that door clicked shut, the way back out had just become farther than she could imagine. The chill in the room made her instinctively reach for the white hotel robe hanging behind the door, wrapping it around herself and tying the belt at her waist. She glanced around once more. Still nothing out of place, unless she counted the faint mustiness in the air, and the way that unsettling sensation of being watched had clung to her from the moment she stepped in. Sitting down on the edge of the bed, she adjusted the pillow. The sheet was so cold it made the skin on her hands tingle. She leaned back, pulled her legs up onto the mattress, and tried to relax. Adrian would probably be down at the lounge for another half hour. She could rest, maybe even doze off, before he returned. The lights were still on. Someone had just sat down on the bed. It wasn't her imagination. She felt the mattress dip slightly beside her, the faint tremor rippling outward. Since childhood, Mei had been sensitive to that feeling. She knew the weight of another body on a mattress. There was no mistaking it. She turned her head, a small smile tugging at her lips out of habit. "You're back already?" No answer. Whoever it was stayed seated there, silent. From her angle, she could only see part of a shirt, except it didn't look like any of Adrian's. Mei leaned just slightly to get a better look, but in that moment, they bent forward. A cold hand touched the belt of her robe. Slowly. Deliberately. The sound of fabric sliding against fabric filled the quiet room. Mei still didn't feel alarmed. She thought Adrian was trying to tease her, so she said nothing, just stayed still, waiting. The belt loosened, inch by inch, then slipped free. The robe fell open slightly, revealing the thin layer she wore underneath. But they didn't laugh. No playful remark. No familiar warmth. Only the cold seeping from that hand. Before she could react, they stood up. She heard the mattress lift as the weight left it, then soft, deliberate footsteps heading toward the bathroom. The door creaked as it opened. A weak yellow glow spilled out. Then came a faint click, water began to run. Mei frowned. Adrian never went into the bathroom without saying a word. Especially when she was right there. This silence felt wrong. The water kept running, longer than normal. Then it stopped. A metallic clink sounded, followed by water again, stronger at first. Then tapering off. She clutched the robe tighter around her. Curiosity began to fade into discomfort. "Adrian? What are you doing in there?" No answer. Instead, a few seconds later, those slow, heavy footsteps returned, each one pressing into the carpet as if to make sure she heard them. Mei's gaze shifted to the foot of the bed. And then, a hand appeared, resting on her ankle. Icy cold. Dry. Heavier than she expected. It lifted her leg, held it for several seconds, then let it drop with enough force to make the mattress tremble. She startled, blurting out, "What was that?" This time, no footsteps back to the bathroom. No water running. Only silence, and the sound of her own heartbeat in her ears. She pulled her legs close, edging away from the side of the bed. One thing was certain now, whoever had just touched her, was not Adrian. Mei sat frozen, hands gripping the robe, eyes fixed on the empty space beside her. The cold from that touch still clung to her skin, as if it had left an invisible mark. The room was dead quiet. No water, no footsteps, just the steady hum of the air conditioning. She swallowed hard. Throat dry, and drew in a slow breath. Maybe it was Adrian, maybe he was just playing around. But that certainty was slipping fast. She decided she would get up and open the bathroom door to be sure. But the moment her feet touched the floor, she heard it. A faint rustling. At first, she couldn't tell where it came from. Then she realized, it was from the bathroom. Not the sound of water. Not normal movement. More like dry fabric brushing together, or something being dragged slowly across tile. She froze, foot hovering above the floor. Her heart was racing. Then, clink. Metal on metal. And the water started again, gushing at first, then thinning to a steady stream. Mei frowned. What is he doing in there? Adrian's showers were always quick, especially in hotels. But this felt like someone letting the water run just to pretend they were using it. She called out, forcing her voice to stay even. "Adrian? Is that you?" Silence. If that's not Adrian, then who is it? The water cut off abruptly. A heavy, unnatural stillness filled the room. It was so dense, she could almost feel it pressing against her skin. Her eyes locked on the bathroom door, still slightly ajar. No movement. No change in light. But she knew something was in there, and it knew she was watching. Suddenly, the door shifted. Just a fraction, enough to widen the gap into a deeper darkness. Mei leaned, trying to see. Nothing. She looked away, telling herself she was too wound up. And then, footsteps. Slow. Very slow. Heavy soles pressing into the carpet, step by step, in time with her racing heartbeat. They stopped right beside the bed. She didn't dare look. She could feel the presence, tall, standing over her. Leaning down. That cold hand touched her leg again. This time, it slid upward to her knee, then lifted her leg entirely. Mei held her breath. It stayed there, unmoving, for several long seconds. Then, let go. The thud shook the mattress. She snapped her head up. No one was there. Her eyes darted to the bathroom, the door was still ajar. Water roared again from the shower, harder this time. Like the tap had been turned all the way. Her skin prickled. This wasn't her husband's idea of a joke. This was deliberate. Repetitive. And it was meant to frighten her. "No, this isn't Adrian," she whispered. And then, she heard it. A laugh. Soft. Cut short. As if choked off halfway. But enough to freeze every muscle in her body. The soft laugh that had just echoed through the room cut off abruptly, as if it had never existed. But Mei knew she hadn't imagined it. The sound still lingered in her mind. Tangled with the pounding of her own heartbeat. The room returned to absolute silence. So silent, every breath she took felt too loud, almost intrusive in the thick, heavy air. She stayed perfectly still, her body tense, ears straining. No footsteps. No water. No whisper of wind. Only that oppressive stillness, blanketing everything. The thought crossed her mind, she could run to the door, leave everything behind, and find Adrian. But her legs felt nailed to the mattress, her body locked in place. She knew if she moved, whatever was hiding here would know, and react. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. The shadows in the corners of the room deepened, thickened. The dim amber light from the ceiling now felt cold. Stripped of any warmth. Then, a faint current of cold air brushed against the back of her neck. So slight it could have been her imagination. But enough to send the fine hairs on her skin standing on end. She whipped around, no one there. The door was still shut tight. Her gaze drifted toward the window. The curtain still hung slightly open. But it no longer stirred. The glass was shut, the safety latch in place. No breeze could have come in. Mei swallowed hard, tried to draw in a deep breath, but the air felt thick. Each inhale harder than the last. A dull ache began to spread in her chest from the tension. Then, from the bathroom, a faint click. Her head snapped toward the narrow gap in the bathroom door. Nothing had changed. No shadow. No shift in light. But then, another sound. The drip of water. Plink, plink, plink. The drops fell irregularly, sometimes quick, sometimes slow. Like someone was standing there, toying with the faucet. Her voice trembled as she called out. "Adrian." Silence. She tried to reason with herself, this was a luxury hotel. Now the silence pressed down so hard it felt like a weight on her chest. She rose from the bed, meaning to head for the door. But as soon as she took one step, a faint rustling sounded behind her. The cold air swept against her neck again, sharper this time, enough to send a full shiver racing over her skin. Mei gripped the robe's belt tighter. Silence returned, but now, she heard something else. Breathing. Faint. Close. She couldn't place where it came from. It seemed to drift through the air itself. Surrounding her, vanishing the moment she strained to hear it. The room felt like a trap. She was in the center, encircled by shadows, silence, and disjointed sounds that seemed to be mocking her. She edged back toward the head of the bed, eyes locked on the bathroom door. From there, it seemed as if darkness itself was spilling out, seeping into the room. Curling up against the wall. She told herself she just needed to hold out until Adrian returned. But the air was freezing, so cold her breath came out in pale clouds. Each minute dragged like an hour. And with every passing second, her dread swelled. Her heartbeat thudded, thump, thump, against the steady hum of the air conditioning. But beneath it, there was something else, something standing. Somewhere, waiting. She closed her eyes and drew in a long breath. Just wait for Adrian, she told herself. But as soon as her eyes began to close, a strange sensation rippled through her body. At first, she thought she was dizzy. But no, it wasn't her that was moving. It was the mattress beneath her. It trembled lightly at first. Then harder. Her eyes flew open. The entire bed, and her with it, began to rise. The furniture around her seemed to sink away as she lifted, slowly, higher and higher. Mei clung to the mattress, her heart hammering. The ceiling light loomed closer, its glass pendant swaying, scattering shards of trembling light over her face. The air was freezing now, like she was being pulled upward inside a block of ice. Breathing became short, shallow. As the mattress neared the ceiling, she saw dust particles floating in the dim glow. The weightlessness made her dizzy, but fear burned through the haze. She wanted to scream, but her throat locked, only a ragged breath escaped. And then, crash! The mattress slammed back down, rattling the entire room. The impact thundered like a clap of lightning, making the walls and furniture tremble. Pain shot through her spine. For several seconds she lay still, ears ringing, vision swimming. Cold sweat slid down her temples. When she finally pushed herself up, everything looked the same, except the ceiling light was still swaying, its glass pieces clinking softly together. She swung her legs toward the floor, then it came. Laughter. Not soft this time. A low, rasping, guttural laugh that filled the room, raising every hair on her body. It went on, unhurried, as if savoring her fear. Her head snapped toward the bathroom. The door was still ajar, the darkness beyond as black as a crack in the world. The laugh came from there, deep, layered, as if more than one voice was speaking. She gripped the robe tighter, her heart pounding. Every instinct screamed, "Don't go near it. Don't open that door." But before she could move, the bathroom door creaked wider, inch by inch. The hinges groaning like they were drawing the moment out. The laughter faded, replaced by a voice. Low. Hoarse. Threaded with the hiss of breath. "You don't belong here." Mei froze. The words were clear, deliberate, each one dragged out before dissolving back into silence. Only the faint clink of the swaying light remained, echoing against the deafening thud of her heart. And now, she knew. Whatever was here, had just told her, plainly, she was not welcome. Mei sat frozen on the mattress that had just slammed to the floor, her breath coming fast. Her heart pounding so hard she could hear each beat in her chest. The air in the room was dry and cold, yet sweat soaked her forehead and back. The raspy words, "You don't belong here," still echoed in her head, as if etched into every vein. She looked toward the bathroom. The door hung ajar. The darkness beyond yawning open like a black mouth waiting to swallow anyone who dared approach. Every primal instinct screamed at her to run. But her legs wouldn't obey. They felt impossibly heavy. Pinned to the bed. Then, the bathroom door began to open. Slowly. No wind. No visible touch. But the hinges groaned, each inch revealing more of that darkness. Spilling into the room and swallowing what little amber light remained. Mei held her breath. In the dark, a pair of eyes appeared. Red. Not the bright red of fresh blood, but a deep, smoldering crimson, like burning coals, set in pits of pitch black. The eyes didn't blink. They locked onto her and didn't let go. A cold current shot down her spine, freezing her from the nape of her neck to her heels. She wanted to scream, but her throat clenched tight, letting out only a ragged gasp. The eyes began to move. Slowly. Closer. The crimson glow grew stronger, reflecting against the bathroom doorframe and staining the white tiles inside the color of blood. Then she heard it, the breathing. Heavy, hoarse. Rattling like air scraping through a rotted chest, dragged over unseen cracks in bone. The voice came again, so close she felt the breath against her ear. "This is mine." Each word fell like a hammer blow. No doubt remained, this thing was not human. Mei edged back toward the far end of the bed, her pulse chaotic. She reached for her phone on the bedside table, but it wasn't there. The eyes kept advancing, steady, relentless. When the darkness from the bathroom reached the edge of the bed, a shape emerged. Not clearly man or woman. Just a long tangle of black hair, matted and hanging low, hiding most of the face, except for those burning red eyes. The body was skeletal. Skin a sickly gray stretched tight over jutting bones. The arms ended in unnaturally long hands with sharp, claw-like nails that gripped the doorframe like an animal ready to spring. Mei's terror finally broke free in a scream, her voice cracking. The sound ricocheted around the room, unanswered. No knock at the door. No footsteps in the hall. It was as if the entire hotel had been swallowed into nothing, leaving her alone with it. It slid forward, feet barely touching the floor, gliding noiselessly. With every inch it closed. The room's temperature plunged, her knees trembling uncontrollably. Mei wrapped the robe tight around herself, curling against the corner of the bed. The red eyes never left her. Then, suddenly, its head tilted to the side, a slow, jerking movement, like the neck might snap. The sound of cracking bone filled the room. Its mouth opened, not into a smile, but into a wide, jagged tear that revealed only darkness. The rasping laugh spilled out, longer now, warped, echoing as if from multiple mouths at once. Mei couldn't take it anymore. She lunged from the bed, bare feet pounding toward the door. But just as her hand gripped the handle, an icy hand clamped onto her shoulder from behind. The grip was so strong she nearly stumbled backward. She screamed again, twisting the handle hard. The door flew open, and warm light from the hallway poured in, slicing through the paralyzing cold that had gripped her since she entered the room. She didn't pause to see what happened to the hand on her shoulder, whether it recoiled or vanished entirely. She bolted out, never looking back. The hallway's thick carpet muffled her frantic steps. But each one still felt like running across ice. Her heartbeat and ragged breaths thundered in her ears. Behind her, the door to the room began closing, slowly, ending with a muted click. It sounded like a promise. A threat. Mei didn't slow down. She kept her eyes forward, never glancing at the endless row of identical doors that seemed to watch her pass. At the elevator, she jabbed the call button over and over, her fingers trembling. The floor numbers above moved unbearably slow, 10. 11. 12. She looked back. The hallway was empty. No movement. No sound. But the sensation of being watched clung to her like a weight, as if she could reach out and touch it. When the elevator finally arrived at her floor, she dashed inside and slammed the button for the lobby. The doors closed, and just before the last sliver of the hallway vanished, she swore she saw a shadow at the far end. The elevator descended slowly, the cables groaning faintly overhead. Mei pressed herself against the wall, clutching her chest, every muscle still tight as stone. When the doors opened onto the brightly lit lobby, she almost stumbled out. The air smelled faintly of coffee and perfume, the scent of the normal world. Across the room, Adrian stood near the bar with a cocktail in hand, speaking to a staff member. His face paled when he saw her rushing toward him. "Mei! What happened?" He set the glass down, hurrying over to grip her shoulders. She didn't answer right away, still scanning the lobby as if expecting it to appear. Her voice shook when she finally spoke. We have to go. Now." He told the staff they were checking out immediately. The clerk's confusion vanished when they saw Mei's pale face and vacant stare. Without another word, they began processing the request. Minutes later, a bellhop appeared with their luggage. Mei didn't care, and didn't want to know, how they'd retrieved it or what they might have seen. Her eyes stayed locked on the front doors. counting every second until they were gone. The glass doors slid open, and the warm, humid night air of Singapore rushed in. Mei stepped outside and drew a deep breath, as if trying to purge the icy dampness of that room from her body. A taxi waited at the curb. Adrian opened the door for her, then climbed in after. As the car pulled away, she looked back one last time. The hotel tower gleamed against the night sky, elegant and serene, as though it had never housed anything out of the ordinary. But to Mei, it was a looming shadow, silent and watchful. She turned away, clutching Adrian's arm, her voice a trembling whisper meant only for them. "We're never going back, never." The taxi turned down a few empty streets. Pale yellow streetlights sweeping across the windows before sliding away into the dark. Inside, Adrian sat close beside his wife, one hand gripping hers, cold as ice. Mei didn't speak. Her eyes faced the window, but she wasn't really looking at anything. It was as if her mind was still trapped somewhere, on the 15th floor of that hotel. Adrian glanced at her several times. Now managing a major hotel chain. When the line picked up, Adrian's voice was low, careful. "I need to ask you about a hotel." When his friend heard the address, there was a pause. In a lowered voice, "Do you know which room?" Adrian hesitated. 15th floor. A sharp inhale sounded through the line. "That room's been marked off for years. It's not supposed to be booked. But sometimes, with the automated system, or a new staff member not knowing, guests still end up there." Adrian frowned. "Why? What happened?" "No one knows exactly what happened. Just that since then, a few guests have had incidents. And they all left in the middle of the night. Some left injured." A cold sweat prickled Adrian's forehead. "Injured?" His friend's voice turned flat. "No one talks about the details. And the hotel prefers silence. But my advice? Never go back there. Not because of rumors, because," he stopped, as if deciding whether to finish. "Because I believe, whatever's there doesn't want anyone to stay." Adrian thanked him and hung up, turning to say something reassuring to his wife. But Mei had heard everything. She sat still, her eyes dark, as if the call had only confirmed what she already knew in her bones. She shook her head slightly, murmuring, "I know, it didn't want me there. It told me, it looked right at me." Adrian took her hand, but found no words. In his mind, an image began to form, of a woman standing in that bathroom. Mei slowly turned to her husband, her gaze far away. "We're never going back, never." Adrian nodded silently. But somewhere deep in his mind, a question began to form, sharp, lingering, and cold. If that thing truly wanted them gone, why did it let them leave unharmed? There was no answer. And as both drifted into their own thoughts, a flash of lightning lit the cafe's front window. In that instant, Mei, and only Mei, saw them. The burning red eyes, standing motionless on the far side of the street, staring straight at her. She blinked. The image vanished. Or a supernatural presence, but a story about the thin line between safety and danger, a line we sometimes only recognize when we've already crossed it. You see, what terrifies us the most isn't always the laughter in the dark or the burning red eyes at the end of the hallway. It's the moment we realize we've stayed too long in a place we were never meant to be. Mei made it out in time, but how many people out there, maybe you, maybe me, are still hesitating? Telling themselves, it'll be fine, even though their gut has been screaming otherwise? The truth is, if you don't leave on your own, there will come a time when something, or someone, pushes you out. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoy haunting, emotional tales with a lingering aftertaste, don't forget to like, share, and hit the bell. I post a new story every week. I'll see you in the next one.